Hey, good afternoon to you. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up in the next hour, 5 o'clock, we'll talk to Rich Anderson. He's the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. Tomorrow, the first day of early voting in the Commonwealth. I'll be at the Fairfax County Government Center tomorrow, 8 o'clock, to cast my ballot. If you're a Fairfax County resident or just want to hang out, you're welcome to join us. We'll be doing that. A little coffee and donuts. WMAL vehicle will be there. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, the Iranians are meddling in the election to try and get Kamala Harris elected. That is the revelation put out by the Biden-Harris administration this week. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, along with other intelligence agencies, announced yesterday that Iran is distributing information that was stolen from former President Trump's campaign to both the Biden campaign and various media outlets. Just to reiterate, that's the Biden-Harris campaign. It contains a bunch of the same people when it was Joe Biden at the top. The FBI, alongside Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, have all shared evidence of Iran's efforts to disrupt the election by sending unsolicited emails to individuals linked to President Joe Biden's campaign featuring stolen content from Trump's campaign, according to the press release on this subject. For more on it, I want to bring in Gabriel Noronha now, Executive Director of Polaris National Security and a former State Department advisor on Iran. Gabriel, good to have you back with us.
Hey, always a pleasure to be on here.
All right, well, so from where I'm sitting, it looks like Iran is trying to meddle in the election, and they're trying to give Kamala Harris an assist to make her the victor. What am I missing?
No, I think that's about it. I think what we've seen is Iran has made the internal decision that a Kamala Harris presidency would be, or even a Biden presidency back in the days, what they thought would be massively and advantageous to its interests. And so they said, we're going to weigh in on this election, and we're going to try to denigrate Trump, who, as everyone remembers, was very hostile to the Iranian regime and its interests. The maximum pressure campaign he instituted deprived the regime of $200 billion versus the sort of maximum appeasement policy of the Biden-Harris administration gave them about $100 billion in sanctions relief. So for the Iranians, it was a pretty easy decision, I think, of which side to weigh in on. But now we've seen them actually weighing in, trying to hack the Trump campaign, trying to give beneficial materials to the Democrat campaigns, and now at least the kudos I will give is to this administration's intelligence community for actually coming out and saying this is what's happening. That's a good standard procedure to be doing here.
The Kamala campaign is swearing up and down that they haven't even seen any of this material, and they haven't used any of this material. What do we know about of how far-reaching this material, whatever this material is? I mean, I'm not even we don't even know if there's anything even scandalous in it. It's probably just campaign mail.
What I've heard is that they actually got the opposition research the Trump campaign itself was doing on the VP candidates who was looking to vet. We know they were vetting Ben Carson and Marco Rubio and JD Vance and a couple others. And what we know is that they were obviously, all campaigns do this. They say what are this candidate's strengths, their weaknesses, find some stories. And so we know that at a minimum was being hacked by the Iranians and distributed. Now, I'll have to say, the Iranians were a little lazy here. What the Russians did back in 2016 with WikiLeaks was a lot more sophisticated. They had sort of this veneer of credible doubt. Here, they just basically went and emailed reporters and emailed the campaign staff and said, hey, we got this from the Trump campaign, please take it and publish it. So it's surprising we haven't seen the stories out in the media yet, but what could certainly be happening here is the Harris campaign using the information and just saying they got it from somewhere else. We have no idea if that's happening and no way to disprove that.
Yeah, they could just reconstruct it and then pretend like they didn't see it from anywhere else. And a number of news outlets, as you point out, have been sent this information as well. Politico had reported in July that it received emails containing internal communications from senior Trump campaign officials and a research dossier, as you point out, that the campaign had put together on J.D. Vance. The New York Times and the Washington Post also reported that they have been sent similar documents, including a 271-page document on J.D. Vance dating back to February. So you have a number of news outlets who are deeply sympathetic to the Biden-Harris administration who now have the Oppo file that the Trump campaign put together on J.D. Vance because they were doing their due diligence?
That's exactly right. You've got it. And, when back in school, there'd be people who would say, hey, can I take your homework and see what the answer is? They might not copy your work exactly, but they'll go and they'll change a few words around, but they know what the answer is, and they're just trying to cheat off of it. So that certainly could have been done here.
Yeah.
And again, what's amazing here is the blatantness with which Iran is doing this. There's a degree to which they didn't even seem to care that they've been caught. They don't have the best intelligence services in the world. Israel's penetrated them completely. But either way, this should be a red flag that Iran wants to meddle in our elections, and they've got the ability and willingness to do this. Back in the 2020 election, I think a lot of people forget this as well. They stole voter registration rolls. They were hacking into election websites and data centers in Alaska and possibly other states as well. So this is not the first time that they're meddling, but this is an effort to go way deeper and more advanced to try to compromise this election.
Let me, I want to move to another topic on Iran that you and I have discussed before, and it's the extent to which the Iranians have infiltrated our own government. There's an Iran envoy by the name of Robert Malley, who's been the subject of a lot of scrutiny because he seems to have a deep connection to the Iranians, and so much so that the Harris-Biden administration had suspended him, I guess. And what can you tell us about that? What's the latest on that saga?
So we have just received a Inspector General report from the State Department that was issued to Congress and just made public today, and it tells about how the senior State Department officials completely bungled the removal of Malley from the security clearance. They didn't tell anyone besides a few senior folks, and so Malley was walking around the State Department. He was still on his official email, and no one knew that his clearance was suspended. So senior officials were going to go share classified materials with him. And some of that was pulled back last minute. One thing, he had no supervisor this entire time for 2 months when he had no clearance before he was eventually suspended without leave. And this is classic government fashion. All the senior officials from Wendy Sherman, the deputy secretary, to the number 3 Victoria Nuland, all sort of said, well, we thought it was someone else's job to monitor him. We thought it was someone else's job to tell him what he couldn't do, but it wasn't my job. And then they said, well, I assumed someone else was watching him and keeping him accountable, but it wasn't me because I assumed someone else was doing it. That, I think, bears a lot of resemblance to what happened in Afghanistan. Everyone thought it was someone else's job to do it, and so nothing got done. One particularly egregious example that's in the report is that he was at a private dinner function with a foreign country who believed that he was still acting in full capacity with full clearance. At some of these dinners, very sensitive matters are discussed. Mm-hmm. And when they found out, our allies were furious that they had been disclosing information to someone that didn't have a clearance, likely because he was compromised. There's allegations that he's been compromised by the Iranians. And so all of this could have been avoided. But again, another case of incompetence of the State Department under the Biden-Harris administration here.
How concerned should we be about Iranian infiltration at other agencies and to the extent that they're able to work their way and advance their interests in other agencies of our own government?
Look, the Iranian regime is one of the most pernicious and dangerous regimes on this counterintelligence side, on this intelligence infiltration side. One thing that they've been wanting to do is they wanted to compromise the White House, compromise the Pentagon, and currently the chief of staff of the what's called the Stoic Office, which does special operations, is a member of the Iranian Experts Initiative, which is something created by the Iranian Foreign Ministry to advance their agenda in American think tanks. This person was given a clearance, even though she was even though she was basically part of this Iranian influence scheme. And when that became revealed, a lot of Republican lawmakers called her to be stripped and fired and stripped of her clearance. She is still in that position today, working with access to some of the nation's most highly guarded secrets.
Amazing. All right, I also want to ask you a little bit about what we saw this week play out in Lebanon. There were a number of explosions all across the country that seemed to be emanating from small pagers and then subsequently walkie-talkie devices carried by Hezbollah terrorists. And now we're seeing all sorts of reports that this was Israel's doing, that they successfully pulled off these very targeted strikes on Hezbollah fighters. What do we know about all of this?
Well, I think it's certainly, if you eliminate all the other people who don't have an interest, Israel seems the most likely candidate for pulling off both something so advanced and simultaneously. This is sort of what Israeli intelligence is famed for, these massive operations like this. What we know is over 4,000 were injured in the first attack, and I think about a dozen killed. And then the next day, exploding walkie-talkies injured another 400 and killed perhaps another dozen. Again, let's be really clear. The targets here are Hezbollah, who blew up 241 Marines back in 1983, who kidnapped and tortured huge numbers of American citizens, and which is a perfect proxy of the Iranian regime. This is a government that wants to kill every American it can get its hands on. They won't hesitate to do that. And so if it was Israel who did this, kudos to them for taking out and literally blinding a huge number of terrorist operatives. Without these devices, Hezbollah is pretty much blind on its own communications network. They had ditched cell phones because they understood the Israelis could monitor and use them to target them. So they went low tech. They went with pagers, they went with walkie-talkies. And it's pretty evident that Israel compromised their supply chain, laced them with explosive batteries, and we've all seen the videos of what's happened next. So I think big picture, on October 7th, Israel's intelligence was the one that made huge mistakes. They've regained their war footing. They're back on the offense. And I think what we need to look at next is whether Israel goes further and opens the military front in Lebanon.
It's amazing, though. It's like you wonder to what extent our heads rolling today and in the upper tiers of Hezbollah for, arranging all these purchases of both walkie-talkies and pagers that turned out to all come from Israeli intelligence.
Exactly. I think the head of procurement should probably get canned if he still has his head or his fingers and eyes still about him. This is incredibly embarrassing. One thing that we've seen actually is there was a message on Chinese social media saying that they have gotten massive overnight orders from Middle East clients saying that they want new communications devices and they have to be made entirely in China with no foreign sourcing. So we're seeing across the Middle East people being paranoid that Israel has compromised their supply chain as well. And either way, I think what we've seen from Israel is the ability to be agile, nimble, creative. And that's why Israel is ultimately going to continue to secure itself against the terrorists on its periphery.
Just amazing. Gabriel Noronha, as always, sir, thank you very much from Polaris National Security. Really good to talk to you today.
Always a pleasure.
This is a wild story. The COVID Czar of New York City, COVID Czars, was a guy called Jay Varma, Dr. Jay Varma, a senior advisor to Bill de Blasio. And he has now been caught on undercover camera, like James O'Keefe style footage, admitting that he hosted large nude gatherings during the pandemic while they were locking the city down and telling people that they weren't allowed to be near each other. The COVID czar, the Anthony Fauci of New York City, was holding, I think nude gatherings is the most PG way we could possibly describe this. Do I have time to play this? I don't have time to play it in its entirety. I'm going to play a little bit of this for you coming up. You've got to hear this, but local news outlet in New York, CBS 6, says Varma helped guide former Mayor Bill de Blasio's response to COVID-19, including crucial decisions about public schools and issuing a vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. The doctor states in the clip, however, he sometimes struggled to follow the city guidance. The doctor explained how he and a group of 10 friends rented a hotel room during the pandemic and took ecstasy together. Quote, everyone had a blast because everyone was so pent up, he says, of the experience. Something about bodies being close to each other, just being naked with friends. So while he was depriving everyone else of the chance to have such ridiculous... I don't even know. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, so that's what the government officials were doing. So on the West Coast, somehow Gavin Newsom had the most family-friendly violation of the COVID policies he was imposing on everyone else. He just went to the French Laundry. In New York City, the COVID czar was having naked time with a bunch of his friends all at once. The brazen details coming up in this undercover footage. He's angry that it got released, by the way. Very upset. He's going to lock somebody down now. 429. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 435 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by Rich Anderson, the chairman of the Republican Party of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Ahead of early voting tomorrow, all throughout the Commonwealth, the general election begins tomorrow. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. All right, let me see if I can get Corey's microphone to work right now. Is that even possible? Let's try that.
Vince, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Perfect. Look at that. Sorry.
All right, we are on air. Let's do this.
Corey's mic is working. All right. Corey, I want to start with the fact that you and I are going to be out tomorrow at the Fairfax County Government Center at 8 o'clock. And I was going to drive the truck, but we decided logistically that didn't make a lot of sense. So Corey's going to drive the WMAL truck to the Fairfax County Government Center tomorrow. And it's going to be fun. We're going to park. I think we'll be able to find good parking. There's parking spaces all over the place there.
Should be. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to take the truck home tonight, drive there tomorrow. WMAL all branded out. I might take it for a joyride, do some marketing myself. We'll see. It'll be fun. You
should do that. You took the course, right? We have these courses here where you have to, the company makes you take a course that you're going to drive the speed limit and all of those things. You're going to follow the rules?
I took the course. I passed the course. And what happens from here, we'll see. I think I'm able to drive. We came close. I barely made that deadline. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to bring that car out.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for doing all the stuff that HR has asked of you. So it puts us in a good position here to have this tomorrow. And the plan is to get some donuts and coffee to share with people, in addition to just the joy of having locked in your vote tomorrow in Virginia.
There's never a bad reason to tailgate anything. So tomorrow we're going to be tailgating the vote. Tailgating is one of my favorite activimes. I'm a veteran tailgater, but I've never tailgated voting before. So I can't wait to have this first experience with you, Vince.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. We have partied separately. I'm going to get to parties in a second. The COVID czar in New York City has just been caught on hidden camera admitting to some disgusting parties during COVID while everybody else was locked down. I'll get to that. But I also want to highlight boat parades, because you're a big boat guy, I know, and there's
also a big parade guy too.
And yeah, perfect. A big boat guy and a big parade guy and a big tailgating guy. So and a big Trump guy. So this is all going in one great direction, which is there's a Trump boat parade coming up in our area, right?
There is, and I just might tailgate for it, too. Next Sunday, September 29th, the boat parade, the Washington, D.C. boat parade. It's the first one of the year. We're calling this an official one. We'll let the campaign know about it. I was in touch with a new friend I made a couple of weeks ago at the pickleball courts, and he happened to be a Trump fan and also owns a boat and a member of the Alexandria Yacht Club. So I'm hanging out with friends above my means. But he said there was a Trump boat parade 4 years ago that apparently got hundreds of boats to show up. I don't particularly remember this. I wasn't into the boat culture at the time, but he said,
I think he's right. I found some evidence of it on the internet.
I saw some pictures, but he says this one's going to be even bigger, way bigger.
I'm not certain I saw hundreds of boats in the images. I saw a handful, at least.
This year,
and they looked
will be
awesome.
Hundreds.
They looked awesome.
Well, I can't wait. So apparently, I only know a few boaters here and there. You run into some people on the water and you wave and talk. But this guy apparently knows a lot of people, and especially all the marinas that are down in Occoquan, about, by boat, maybe 40 minutes south.
Yeah.
He's friends with a lot of these marina operators, and the marina operators have the emails of, he said, 10,000 boaters in the area. So there's an email blast going out to all these boaters, 10,000 of them, and apparently they've got a whole bunch of signups so far. So the idea is we're going to meet next Sunday, September 29th at noon, just north of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. And we're going to go up north towards Georgetown. He says we're not going to make it to Georgetown. I might try to twist his arms. Maybe we can because of the no-wake zones and all that kind of stuff. We might create a little bit of a unsafe environment. We'll see. I might get there later. But the idea is to go all the way north, just short of the Lincoln Memorial, circle back around, circle the area a couple of times, probably down by Old Town, and just make a big, giant scene. And I can't wait for it.
So when you're on the water, I know this is a non-scientific assessment, but I'd love to know how frequently this occurs. How often do you see Kamala Harris flags on a boat?
I have seen exactly 0 Kamala Harris flags on the water. And
You've never seen a single one?
Not a single one. I don't even think they exist.
Have you ever seen a Biden flag on the water?
Never seen a Biden. Believe it or not, I've seen more RFK Jr. flags on the water. Robert F. Kennedy. I swear to God, I've seen actually one of those. It was a Kennedy Shanahan. I had to get my binoculars out from under my seat. Is that what I think it is? And it sure it was. It was an RFK Jr. flag. But I have seen 0 Kamala flags. And, of course, Washington, D.C. is, 90% Democrat. As we've discussed before, as you've witnessed firsthand, the reactions we get are so overwhelmingly positive, and more so recently, Vince, even since the last time we were out there is a whole nother energy. Last week we were out there getting thumbs up, claps everywhere. People are energized, and this is a small sample size. It's anecdotal, but there is a new energy that I haven't felt ever before.
I want to play some audio of somebody else who's done a boat parade. This is CNN correspondent Elle Reeve. She went inside of a MAGA boat parade. What state was this? Was this in Florida? Do we know?
It looked like Florida. The water was way too clear to be Washington, D.C. I'm going to guess Florida.
It wasn't the Potomac. We know that much. So this CNN correspondent, Elle Reeve, she goes to the boat parade and she's asking people why they're supporting Trump. And one man says the reason he's supporting Trump is because the costs of everything have grown completely out of control. And she confronts him. She says some version of, how dare you? You own a boat. You're basically a rich guy. So what are you complaining about? Take a listen to this.
What's your most important issue?
The economy, getting the interest rates down, getting it where we can afford to live in America. Right now, it's too expensive.
Okay, now let me maybe ask like a slightly impolite question. But, if you can afford a boat, you're not hurting so bad, right? Because a boat costs a lot of money and it's a lot of upkeep.
Listen, nobody gave me shit. I earned everything that I've got. I'm retired military, retired power plant, and I am successful and retired and with boats, jet skis, because I did it right. And everybody has that chance.
Yeah.
Whether they choose or not, that's up to them.
I would never try to take anything away from you in that way. But what I'm asking is, groceries are probably a smaller part of your budget than, say, someone who's like a little worse off.
Oh, my goodness.
I think it's interesting that people who are a little bit more comfortable are still so concerned about the economy. Did you see what I'm saying?
Because I want my money to go further. I want inflation to go down. I want interest rates to go back down. I want all that. But that covers everybody in the economy. Not just me, not just the poor, not just the rich. It covers everybody.
Now, something I've heard from some people, tell me if this applies to you, is like they're worried their kids aren't able to afford a house or a car.
No, I trained my kids and taught my kids properly. They have great educations, and they're both successful in their careers. Actually, they're doing better than me.
So she confronts him. She's like, she's at a boat parade. They're trying to make a mockery of the people who would dare be a part of a boat parade, right? The whole frame up of a CNN segment about a Trump boat parade is not to tell you about a fascinating political phenomenon and how it's taking the country by storm. That's not the point of this segment. The point of this segment is condescension. The point of this segment is to judge these people, to say, look how pathetic they are, getting together with their boats and their flags and their support for Trump. And then for them to, of all people, how dare they raise the problem of the costs in this economy when they can afford boats? They're fine. They shouldn't be whining, Corey Inganamort.
Just the utter contempt that CNN has for people who are successful in life. The man, he said he wasn't given bleep. He worked for everything that he had. It sounds like his kids are doing well, and they're working for everything they have. They're doing better than he is. The tone of this reporter's questions, just absolutely judging him for being successful and wanting to really knock him down. And she said, well, some people are saying, which is really another way of saying, I want to ask you this, they're worried about their kids and interest rates. Well, yeah, of course they are, but that doesn't affect rich people. Rich people are probably not taking out loans at the rates that poor people are or middle-class people are. Most 90% of Americans are. Yeah. They're all taking out loans. So why she would attack him on this line of thinking that somehow, wanting lower interest rates doesn't help everyday Americans, like a rising tide, not to do a boat reference here, I might as well. Just the first thing I thought of, a rising tide raises all boats, even rich people, and yes, definitely poor people and middle-class people.
Also, it's a crazy snap judgment to say, oh, because you own a boat, you're fine.
Yeah,
I know there are lots of people out there who make bad economic decisions with their money, including purchasing boats. Boats, as you probably know, Corey, very expensive.
They're
to maintain.
very expensive. And do you know how much it costs to fill that thing up with gas each time? I mean, every afternoon is like, it's $150. That's why, I'm not rich. I have some friends contribute every single time. It holds 56 gallons of gas. I burn about a third every time I go out there, and gas on the water is more expensive than even on land. It's $5.50 a gallon. So I've put over $300 in that thing every time, every 2 or 3 times I go out there.
Sounds like the kind of guy who's tracking his expenses. I just got to say, I also want to play some other audio for you here. It's not just the boat parade audio, although that's fantastic and demonstrates CNN being completely out of touch, as always. It's also this guy, Dr. Jay Varma. This audio is unbelievable. He is the former COVID Czar for New York City, and the podcaster, comedian Steven Crowder, conservative, was able to capture this. Now, I don't know. I don't know. I think they do this. I think this is one of the things that he and his crew do. They do these undercover videos, a lot like James O'Keefe and others who have really dug up so much good and important information. And but at any rate, they shared this today. This is their content, and it's of the COVID Czar from New York City, Dr. Jay Varma, admitting on hidden camera that while everybody else was locked down by the government, well, he was having a really wild, drug-fueled, naked time with all of his closest friends.
I actually was the one who convinced the mayor to make it a mandate.
Like, New York City found out that you were having sex parties during COVID?
Yeah, it would have been a big deal. Yeah, it would have been real bad. We went to some, underground, dance party, underneath a bank in Wall Street. And we were all rolling, we were all taking Molly, and everybody's high. And I was so happy, because I hadn't done that in a year and a half, a year or whatever. And but I was looking around being like, I wonder if they sees me, they're going to do, because this was not COVID friendly. The only way I could do this job for the city was if I had some way to blow off steam every now and then.
They just needed to blow off steam. The lockdowns were so hard on this guy, and of course, as a result of his policies, they were so hard on him. He just needed to blow off some steam, go to a secret underground bunker in Wall Street where he could do a little bit of Molly and then have a bizarro sex party.
Because hotels didn't want people gathering there. because I was like running the entire COVID response in the city. My wife and I like had one with our friends, like in August of like that first summer. So we rented a hotel. And it was fun.
August of that first summer, that would be the summer of 2020. It was August of that first summer, so we just, we went to a hotel, a bunch of friends.
Like took like Molly, and just like it was like 8 or 9 of us, and then 8 to 10 of us in a room, and everybody had a blast because everybody was like so pent up because it had been like.
We were having a blast. He says we all took Molly. It was 8 or 9 of us, 8 or 10 of us, and we were all just so pent up. He said, it was so difficult during that time frame for me, the guy who created these policies everybody was suffering under.
It was just like stuck together and stuff like that. Yeah, and sometimes it isn't so much about like infantry executives. Sometimes it's just something about like bodies being close to each other. Right?
He said something about like how they were all just together, and it wasn't entirely just about sex. He said it was just about the bodies just being close to one another. This is the COVID Czar for New York City. What were they telling us back then? What were the rules back then? The ever-shifting rules. I think the rules were social distancing. I think that was one of the rules. The rules were stay away from people who aren't related to you. Keep a very small social circle. I don't think 8 or 9 or 9 or 10, naked people smashed up against each other was exactly what was on Anthony Fauci's charts, the handouts that they were doing on how we could all stay separated.
Like naked with friends. Was that like when everything was locked down? But it was like the summer of 2020. So like walk around the streets and eat outdoors.
I love how there's no mystery to this. He's just giving us literal dates. It was the summer of 2020. It was August.
There wasn't any restrictions on gathering. Like you could technically gather people. The hotels didn't want to have parties, but they weren't gonna like. Yeah. It's so funny. It's like this because I did all this like deviant like sexual stuff while I was like,
It's so funny. I was doing all this deviant sexual stuff. He's saying it so matter-of-factly. Like, he was like, it's so weird. It was raining in the morning, and then it wasn't raining after that. He's very matter-of-factly describing this.
On TV and all this stuff. Yeah. And people are like, aren't you afraid? Aren't you embarrassed? And I was like, no, actually, I'm like really like I love being my authentic self. So the way we do it in public health is we make it.
I love being my authentic self, he says. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed at all. Oh, so you'd be happy telling everybody about this and not just being caught on hidden camera?
Very uncomfortable to be unvaccinated. I don't expect the education to change your behavior. I'm just going to make it really hard for you to do your job. You can't get a job. You can't go to a restaurant.
So if you don't get the jab, I'm going to make your life miserable, he says on the hidden camera. You're not going to be able to go to your job. You're not going to be able to go to a restaurant.
You can't go to school. It's like, I'm just going to get vaccinated.
So was it technically like kind of forcing people?
Yeah, that's what you force people by making it really uncomfortable.
You force people by making it really uncomfortable, he says. He was bragging about that too. According to the radio station 1010 Wins, they have a comment today up in New York from Jay Varma, who is now saying that this was all taken completely out of context. I'm not sure what context you could possibly add to this to improve it. He says it was an ultra right-wing commentator, or at least that's what the radio station claims. Jay Varma has slammed the release by ultra right-wing commentator. They're looking for adjectives to make him as toxic as possible. And activist Steven Crowder of a secretly recorded conversation that was, quote, spliced, diced, and then taken out of context, in which Varma discusses participation in gatherings during the pandemic involving sex and illicit drugs. Quote, in those private conversations that were secretly recorded, spliced, diced, and taken out of context, I referred to events that transpired 4 years ago, says Varma. Yeah, we know. That's why we're talking about it. It was during COVID. That's exactly why we're talking about it. I love it. He's instantly defaulting to the Clinton school of PR. It's old news. Yes, of course that happened. It's very old news. It was spliced and diced and taken out of context, and the events were 4 years ago. Which excuse are you going with? That you were misrepresented, or the events took place 4 years ago, so we don't have to talk about them anymore? His specialty as a physician is epidemiology, they say. Quote, between April of 2020 and May of 2021, I participated in 2 private gatherings. I take responsibility for not using the best judgment at the time. That's not the sin here. It was just 2. I love the euphemism for his his chaotic sex parties. I was involved in 2 private gatherings. Stop harshing my mellow. Stop picking on me, dude. It was all spliced, diced, and taken out of context. Unbelievable. What school did he go to? Oh, he went to Harvard University. Typical. And UC San Diego School of Medicine. And now he's the graduate of all sorts of sex parties during the lockdowns, by his own admission. It's your calls ahead, and we'll be joined by Rich Anderson, chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. Early voting begins tomorrow in the Commonwealth. More on that ahead.